What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into Dunkel Productions. Y'all know what it is. We are excited to be joined by the Vice President of Off the Ball Network, a host of a podcast, Jeff Needs Sports, the Ohio State Buckeyes fan. Jeff, how you doing tonight, man? I'm happy to have you on.
I'm happy to be here, man. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I love talking to Buckeyes. I've kind of got over the mourning process, and I'm ready to move on to next season. We've had some exciting news this week, so I'm feeling better. I'm looking on to 2022 already. We'll talk some NFL, but I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully I can match your energy. You guys have a lot of energy on this show, so I'll try and keep up.
Yeah, Jeff. We just try and bring positivity in everything that we do, and that's why we bring the energy, especially. But Jeff, you alluded to it, man. We got some big news from the Ohio State Tuesday night. Right before my night class, actually, got word that Jim Knowles, I believe is his name,
Yes.
is joining the Ohio State as their defensive coordinator. Last season, coached Oklahoma State's defense as their DC, which ranked third in total defense. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this hire, man?
It's really awesome. It's the most important part of it that I got excited about was all season. It's no secret. Buckeye fans, Buckeye haters, everybody that watched Ohio State play knew that there was problems on the defense. Even Ryan Day himself did by switching defensive coordinators, early in the season and all that. And what was awesome, as Ohio State fans, as soon as we got done, licking our wounds from the Michigan game, we were like, we got to fix defense, got to fix defense. And within what 4 days of Oklahoma State being eliminated from the playoffs, we hire, their defensive coordinator, who he's not only a great candidate, he's probably the best available candidate in the country since Venables went to Oklahoma, which I don't even know if Venables was better. I'm just saying, as far as candidates. So the most important part was that Ohio State recognized the issue just like we did, and they addressed it in the best possible way they could. How it works out is not even near as important. It's the right decision. It brought energy back in, to the program quickly. We have the manpower already, on the field that this guy can. His style of defense, he gets the best out of his athletes. It's perfect for this. We kind of leaned into this already with playing the 4-2-5 this year, and this guy, Ohio State's been trying to find the bullet position for about 5 years now, and they just haven't mastered it. There's several guys over the years tried to play it. It just hadn't worked out. This guy will do the best with that. We call it the bullet position because of the silver bullets, whatever you want to call it, a rover, whatever you want to call the guy. Knowles gets the best out of that position. So it is a win across the board for Ohio State this week as far as snagging Jim Knowles.
One I think too, we've kind of seen this in the Big 12, which is really interesting. We're kind of seeing them move to defense a little bit now in that conference. And when I first was talking with a couple of my buddies who are huge Ohio State fans, we were speculating, who's going to be the next DC, because we all thought, hey, you got to bring someone in.
Yeah.
It's inexcusable to give up 200 plus rushing yards and lose to Oregon, and also that team up north in Michigan, which hurt really bad. So I think it's good that the Buckeyes realized it. And what I like about Ryan Day is he's always quick to fix it. He sees something wrong. He sees that something is wrong. He's going to go out. He's going to fix it. Another thing that I've heard about Jim Knowles, and I don't know if you've heard this, Jeff, as well, is that he is a very good recruiter on defense, which is great because we already have Larry Johnson. Ryan Day is one of the better recruiters. And now you add in Jim Knowles, who's a defensive minded coach, just adds more to our recruiting and, to our football team over the next few years, hopefully.
Oh yeah, it's great, especially with the way he's going to do something Ohio State hadn't seen in probably since 14. Honestly, is blitz packages and exotic looks and pressure in the quarterback. We just haven't been able to do a lot of that just because of we don't really know what the issue has been, whether it's been personnel or whether it's been coaching. We hopefully will find out that it was coaching because it's harder to change all your personnel. But it's great. So then now you're going to go recruit a player and say, this is some stuff we can do. He can show them the tape of, Oklahoma State and some of the fun stuff they did. And that's going to get players excited. I think that without the change, what we would have went into next year basically saying, "Hey, we're going to play cover two. This is our defense." You might get a little man to man on the outside. It's not exciting for a high school player, especially someone that wants to go to the NFL. Now you're bringing in guys that are like, I might be if you get to play. I mean, if it works out and you get to play that bullet position, you're going to have sacks, you're going to have interceptions, you're going to have so much versatility. You're just going to have a lot of fun out there. So I think that you're right. Just his brand, his excitement. He's been a head coach, so I think importantly too, hopefully Ryan Day can just stay on his side of the hallway, coach the offense, and not have to deal with the defensive distractions that he had to deal with this year, especially early in the season. So that's another big part is this guy can run the entire defense, and it sounds like he can also is a great position coach too, which is a huge plus. So I mean, I just can't say enough. It's just a giant win for Ohio State this week that they honestly they needed. We needed a shot of adrenaline it right now.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of puts the hope back in Buckeyes fans. I think after that Michigan game, I think people were kind of questioning this team, this coaching staff, all of it. And I think one of the things that I took away from that game was is that hey, we had trouble stopping the run early against Oregon, and it never really changed.
Nope.
And then when we played Michigan, who had the guys up front that are comparable to our D line, it was,
Yep.
that was the result. And another thing too, Jeff, that I'd like to touch on is this roster that Ohio State has, especially defensively, is very young. So
Yeah.
hopefully, they can use this year as more development. You bring Jim Knowles in, he gets working with those guys over the spring into that next season, and I think you're going to see his defense kind of take off a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys, especially me and Jay talked about it on his show last week. That's Jay Stevens for people, those who don't know who I'm talking about. We talked about there's a few guys that I think this Knowles can get a lot of. I think JTT has a lot of versatility that we haven't tapped into yet. Of course, the defensive, if Proctor's healthy, then that frees up Hickman a little bit. And so I think Hickman can do some different stuff out there and show some different looks. So I think there's 2 or 3 guys already. And I am 100% confident that we're going to get at least one really good get in the transfer portal. I just can't imagine that Ohio State with all this energy, with such a great offense coming back, grabbing Knowles. I can't imagine that we're not going to snag a high quality defensive player, probably at linebacker through the transfer portal. So, I'm not a super optimistic guy for those who listen to my show, and I was proven right this year. Ohio State did falter in the ways that I thought they would. I am super optimistic about going into next season with these changes.
Now, Jeff, let's move into these New Year's Six games,
Let's
man.
do it.
And let's start off with Michigan and Georgia. I think that this is a matchup where you look at 2 very similar teams. You look at 2 very similar coaches, and you look at 2 very similar programs. And for me, I'm really excited about this matchup. Obviously, as you posted on Twitter the other day, us Buckeye fans will not be voting for that team up north. We are all
No.
about the dogs, and if Michigan somehow beats them, then we're probably all about the Alabama Crimson Tide, as
Yep.
much as it hates me to say it. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on this game? Because I see a lot of similarities between these 2 teams here.
Yeah, I look at this game and you touched on it. I look at it. I always try to tell everybody I am a fan and I do not hide it, but I also do. I honestly analyze the games. Like, and my point was to just elaborate on what Dunk was saying there is that it's the one of the us and that team are one of the biggest rivalries in the history of sports. There's no reason to tell anybody that we would be rooting for each other because I know plenty of Wolverine fans and I know that they don't root for us. That's how rivalries work, was my point in that. So to act like all of a sudden we're going to root for them because we're in the same conference that's ridiculous. Of course we're all pulling for Georgia, and if nothing else, Georgia's has a close enough color scheme that we can just, if we squint, it kind of looks similar to the Buckeyes out there. It's the best we're going to get. But honestly, as a matchup, though, it's great. I love this matchup. This is, this is a steel on steel, stone on stone. I know Georgia got exposed in that Alabama game and some of their weaknesses. And this is one of those things, and Georgia has some of the problems that Ohio State had early in the year. When you have such a good team, but when the offense slows down a little, it puts so much more pressure on the defense, no matter how good they are. Things got a little out of hand. I don't think Michigan can explode offensively on Georgia quite like Alabama did. Michigan is more of a team that, just keeps hitting the cracks really fast, and then finally they break through. But then they don't let up. Credit to them. Like, they score. They're a well-trained team. They're an athletic team. They're a tough team, and they get better. And then in the third and fourth quarter, if they've got the lead, then it's trouble because Harbaugh. He always has some really great, I won't call them trick plays, but like misdirection plays. Because I have the belief that I don't think there's anything it's a trick play unless it's like a fumble rooski or something like, um, you know, throwbacks and all that stuff. Like, that's things that the defense can read. These aren't gimmicks; they are misdirection plays. He's great at those, to where if he can get that lead late, he can steal a touchdown. I think both quarterbacks for Michigan are playing really good right now. I did not expect that. I knew this team was really good. I knew they had a shot at the playoffs even early in the year, but I did not expect that both their quarterbacks would be so ready. So that has really narrowed the gap on what I thought this game was going to be. And Georgia's quarterbacks are kind of the opposite. They're, Bennett's not playing. His weaknesses have showed up. I don't even, Daniels is what I never was super high on Daniels. So I think that's where these two teams, to me, have come down to earth. I know Georgia's defense will be the best one that Michigan has ran against, which is tough. And it's tough to run against that team, period. They've got some monsters. Michigan's offensive line has had a great 2 or 3 weeks of football. I mean, they're clicking on all cylinders right now, which is awesome. So the key is which quarterback, for whichever team is going to have the best game, and it's going to boil down to the quarterback. I don't think the quarterbacks can play bad and these teams can grind it out. I think one of the quarterbacks has to play good to win this game. I think Georgia has the advantage. Yeah, but not. I don't think it's huge. I don't. I'm thinking. Honestly, I think this is going to go to the fourth quarter, and it's probably going to be decided by a mistake by one of the teams. It's really looking forward to kind of an old-fashioned matchup.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one too, Jeff. And personally, I think Michigan and Georgia are both two teams that, going into the season, I thought they would both have really good seasons,
Mm-hmm.
because you looked at their rosters and you said, okay, they have a lot of talent on there. Um, and they're meeting in the playoff. I think I agree with your point though. I think it's going to be the quarterbacks, because we know that Georgia is very good defensively. We know, obviously, Michigan, how good they are defensively. Their running game is insane. Michigan's is. I think the key in this one is turnover differential.
Yeah.
I think this is how this game is gonna be decided, because I think it's gonna be close late. I think whoever gets that last turnover is gonna win this game, and this is gonna be a fun one to watch. Kind of an old fashioned, I think 11, 12 round fight, and it's going to be whoever wins is going to be really physically gassed, I believe,
And,
heading
and
into the national
And I want to,
championship.
and another thing we need to see has, we honestly, Michigan's had 2 of the best weeks in college football this season, but the
Yeah.
back-to-back wins that they've had. What is Georgia's answer for Hutchinson? I mean, that's the secret. Like, Ohio State did nothing to try and help out on Hutchinson. They just let him go one-on-one against the tackles. He destroyed them. Iowa, that was a complete mismatch from the beginning. And so, Georgia's set up a little better for that. Say what you want about the difference between the SEC and the rest of the country. Is the SEC as good as they think they are? Probably not. But their fronts are. Their defensive fronts are really good in the SEC. So they've got more experience with dealing with these high-powered, defensive ends and stuff. So that could be something to watch for. Georgia's tight ends are really good. They've got 2 or 3 that can, kind of rotate through there. They're gonna get a lot of time on the ends. So that's something that if they're just a little more equipped to handle it. But I will say that Bennett, if he gets loose like he did on Stroud, I don't see Bennett being able to do what Stroud did in that game. So I could also see this bizarro world where Michigan runs away with this game, because I honestly thought Ohio State matched up pretty good against Georgia for some different reasons, but I never thought that Georgia was, the Hercules that they were presented to us. I
Right.
think they're really good, but I could also see a world where Michigan, the way they're clicking right now, if they were playing this weekend, I would say Michigan would win. If they could take that momentum from the last 2 weeks and carry it in, but they're not. It's 3 weeks away. Things change. Injuries happen in practice, blah, blah, blah. Kids get in trouble, all the distractions, the Heisman stuff, everything, factors in. So, that's why I still think it's Georgia by a little bit. But Hutchinson he may decide the game for him.
Yeah, I mean, you got to tip your cap to Michigan. The way they've been playing has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
But let's move to the team that dominated Georgia in that SEC championship game, Alabama versus Cincinnati. Now, Jeff, I'm gonna keep it real with you, man. I'm gonna keep it real for a minute, okay? Cincinnati, a lot of their fans are complaining how they shouldn't have been number 4, and I'm like, hey, you guys want a shot, and you got your shot. You got your shot at the biggest dog in college football history, probably in Nick Saban,
Yeah.
and a team that is absolutely clicking right now after that win against Georgia, and also you give Saban a month to prepare. Like you are walking into a Herculean Alabama squad that's mostly healthy outside of probably John Mechie. Jeff, does Cincinnati keep it close, man? I think that's the big question.
And you've already pretty much wrote the headlines for us, and I'm not saying this because I'm not one of these like G5 haters and all these
Right.
things. I don't I have a lot of reasons why Cincinnati's season isn't as hard as other, the Power 5 teams, but I also understand by the criteria, they did what they needed to do. They're well coached. I think Desmond Ritter's awesome. I think that guy is the difference in that whole team, things like that. So they did what they had to do. But what you just said, look what Saban did to Georgia. He's had one eye on him for a few weeks, probably explained some of that Auburn game. When he has time to think about it and his athletes have time to get healthy, guys like Anderson and stuff, like the facts of the matter is I've seen it with a lot of teams that have played Alabama over the years, even Ohio State. Like if you think back to the Ohio State victory in 2015, the championship season, when that game started, Alabama was beating the snot out of them. Ohio State was not ready for the speed. They weren't ready for the strength. They weren't ready for all the action on defense. And I still stand by it, and I don't care. It didn't happen. I still stand by it. If Lane Kiffin just goes conservative on offense, I don't think Ohio State wins that game. It doesn't matter now. It's over. I think Lane that night was out to stomp Ohio State, and he put the ball in the air too much with a quarterback that wasn't ready. No offense, Blake, but you just weren't ready for that game, and that still cost him. And then this I see more like the year before when Alabama and Notre Dame meet. And then, like, from the first whistle, you're like, okay, these two teams are not on the same level. This could get ugly quick. That's what I see happening to Cincinnati. Not because they're a bad team. It's just, Bryce Young looks great right now. He's playing so good, and just sheer size. And Mechie being out hurts. They're not like great at wide receiver like they were last year.
No.
They're good, but I'm rooting for the story of Cincinnati. There's actually a kid that my son played high school football. Played high school football with probably his last year. Is actually on Cincinnati's team. So, we got they're closely connected to us here. But as an analyst, I just don't see the path where Cincinnati can physically keep up with them for 4 quarters. So I don't expect it to be crazy because Nick won't get crazy in the playoffs like he didn't Notre Dame last year, but he will control the game. So I'm thinking like a 21-point victory by Alabama, but that doesn't mean that Cincinnati is going to look foolish. I just think they're going to be overwhelmed by just all the factors. There's so many factors. I mean, I would consider this possibly. Actually, I will say if Cincinnati pulls this off, I will say it's the greatest victory I've seen in college football. I will say that right now.
Yeah, it has to be up there because I think Cincinnati. I think they're a solid team. They
Oh yeah,
obviously have some talent, but like watching that Georgia game last week, like, and here's the funny thing, Jeff, is that I had people come on my show. I had people in my comment section, Instagram comments, all the above. Georgia, 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 Georgia. That's the team. They're going to win. And I said, do you guys forget who's on the other sideline? I'm like, it wouldn't even shock me if Bama wins this by 17 to 21 points. And someone commented, are you crazy? Saturday night, I responded to the comment and I'm like, well, looks like I was correct. And they're like, I can't believe you called that dunk. And I'm like, here's the thing is that Saban is just he gets that advantage, he finds that advantage, and he just goes. And when you have a quarterback like Bryce Young, who
Yeah.
was playing the way it was against Georgia, against a lesser defense in Cincinnati, I think this dude's gonna explode again. I think it's probably not relatively close. I think they just control the game. I think Bama too much speed. And JMO, our guy from Ohio State, I think is gonna have a big day.
Yeah, did you and something and a weakness I see a lot of Cincinnati. Like if anybody watched the game last week versus Houston, it's a really close game going into the. I think it was mid second quarter. I don't think it was third yet. Regardless, it was like a 1 or 2 point game. Cincinnati's driving. They have a nice, solid, sustained drive, which that's going to be hard against Alabama. And then they have a play to where like they kind of use the advantage of their tight end versus Houston, and they get a good touchdown, and they kind of out physical them, for a couple plays, and all of a sudden they've got a 14-point or 15-point lead, whatever it was. The bottom line, what I'm trying to get to is I don't see that path for them to do that against Alabama like they've done to AAC teams all year to kind of like get those spurts. I don't see where Alabama can calm down and relax. Now, Alabama or Cincinnati's defensive backs are great. They showed that against Notre Dame, but I don't think that Notre Dame offense, and let's face it, that's what Cincinnati's hanging their hat on this year, is that victory over Notre Dame. Notre Dame wound up being a really good team. It's a great victory, but that offense is nothing compared to what Alabama can throw at them. Bill O'Brien's actually doing a really good job down there. I'm not a big fan of him, but he's done a nice job at offensive coordinator for him this year. And they're so good at scheming to get guys open. And just like you said, that's somebody's going to be open. Even their third or fourth string wide receiver is going to be as good or better probably than most teams that Cincinnati's played this year. We watched what they did to Ohio State last year, and Ohio State was a really good team. When they have time to scheme a guy open, it's going to be over. So I look for the same thing, kind of like national championship. A lot of motion. They're going to get a mismatch, and they're going to get those big touchdowns. And I think it's just going to take Cincinnati too long to score to keep up with that.
So Jeff, the Buckeyes are going to be playing in the Rose Bowl against a very good Utah team, by the way, who's having a really solid year. Now Jeff, I've watched Utah a good amount this year. Obviously, I've watched the Buckeyes. I think this is going to be a really fun game.
Yeah.
Just from a fan perspective, I think this is going to be a really fun game. What do you kind of look for in this one? And are you excited about the Rose Bowl? I know it's obviously not what we're kind of looking for as Buckeye fans, but it is, the granddaddy of them all.
So yeah, I'll be forthright. I'm a playoffs or nothing guy. That doesn't mean that I think the Buckeyes failed or anything. Anybody can go back on my Twitter. I'm an open wound, with the Buckeyes. I put it out there. I understand this is an exhibition, but what I do see is what's cool about this game is both teams have reasons to care. Utah is rolling. They're another team. This is another reason for playoff expansion. I'd love to see Utah get another. I'd love to see Utah play again this week because they're rolling. I'm glad that we're not playing them this weekend. To be honest with you, things can settle down a little. What I want to see though, Utah wants to go there. We know what they want to do. If anybody that plays Ohio State, they just want that on their resume. They want to beat Ohio State. Like there's no question. There's no lack of motivation. So what I want to see from Ohio State's standpoint, we're pretty much assured that Olave and Wilson probably won't play in that game. At least one of them's not going to, which really hurts. I mean, because they're great and they're also leaders and they're just guys that are there. But what I want to see is how much does Ohio State, what kind of energy do they bring and how much do they care? because I've said it before. There's this world to where they're coming off a Michigan loss, and then all of a sudden they show up flat to a Rose Bowl and get beat by a good, tough, get out tough by a Utah team. Then they got Notre Dame. The first game next year coming off of a summer, which Notre Dame's always good. The last, well, they won't be under Kelly, but Freeman's a good coach. So there's this terrible world to where Ohio State, loses these 3 big games in a row. And now we have all these question marks and blah, blah, blah. So I need to see the energy. Like, how much do you care about being in a Rose Bowl? It sounds like Stroud's all in. He's from SoCal. This is his dream game and all these things, which is awesome. So if the Ohio State comes in high energy, they win. I don't think anybody would argue that they're a better team. Both these teams at their best, Ohio State's a little better, but can they? We've seen this time and time again with teams that miss the playoffs. They really struggle to get that energy up. We saw it with Florida last year, Georgia last year. Like, they just don't play the same as they did midseason when it comes to these bowl games. So that's my biggest concern. And I don't think Ryan Day can afford to have that on his resume right now. He's having a good week, kind of bailed him out by hiring Knowles. But I don't think that he can bring his squad in and then basically for 2 years in a row, his final game, get thumped. It will start to matter, and it starts to matter with boosters, and then everybody starts whispering. I don't think Ryan Day can afford that. So if it's the energy level that I care about. I'll watch the game. I'll have fun. Of course, I'll want them to win. I understand that there's a bigger prize out there, but I just need to see them care about this game, as much as the fans do, to be honest with you.
Well, so Jeff, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've kind of been seeing it around the internet and people that I talk to, and it sounds to me like there's a slim belief of people in the Buckeye circle that Garrett Wilson will return. Now, I don't know how much truth there is there.
I have heard that too, yes.
But I will say this, I could see it, one, because this is a very loaded class with defense, offensive linemen that are projected to go early. I think Wilson's projected like 11 to 20 range. If he waits a year, maybe he's top 10. So I could see that. I actually think, Jeff, that both of those guys are going to play because they're team guys. Olave and Wilson are team guys to me, and they're all about the team. They're all about the we versus the I. Unlike a lot of other players that you see in this situation, Jeff, who are, a lot of people can say, oh, well, they're doing it because they got bigger and brighter aspirations. I understand that. I get it. It's a fair point. But again, it's like these guys are so team oriented. I love Chris Olave because he's a team guy. He's a leader. Like, I'm going to miss the heck out of that man. Like, he's probably my top 5 favorite Buckeyes.
He's a legend. He's an absolute Buckeye legend. And I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah. And like, for me, this game, like you said, Jeff, it's going to be all about energy and effort. And I think this kind of has a feel to 2018 for me when it was Urban's final game, where, the Buckeyes, they came out, they played all right. They didn't play great, but they won.
Yeah.
I think this one, they're gonna come out, they're gonna play around that same, and I think they're gonna win a close game. I think this will be a great bowl game.
Yeah, I do too, and I like what you say. I think there's an option too. To where, let's say Olave and Wilson, they can come up with a plan for this. They've got the receivers to back them up, so maybe they're like, let's kind of phase the other guys in. Like, instead of Olave, playing every snap, but you still have him on the team for motivation and to talk to the other guys. So, like, a situation like that could be awesome. And again, I don't begrudge any player that doesn't. I totally get it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they should play the Rose Bowl or they're quitting or anything like that. They did their part. Olave and Wilson did their part. We didn't deserve Olave back this year, and it was awesome to watch him. They got us right to the edge. So I won't hold anything against them if they leave, and I'll be ready for the new guys to come in. It's going to be crazy. I'm curious to see. I think Steel Chambers is probably a really good player because with these extra practices, these guys get a focus on their position. And these bowl game practices are giant for teams moving forward, especially with young teams. So it's going to be a completely different Buckeye team, rolling in to Pasadena.
Jeff, you want to keep going on some more bowl games, or you want to jump to some NFL?
Whatever you want to do, man. I am here for you.
All right, let's jump to some NFL now, Jeff. I find it interesting with your power rankings. You kind of set it up in four different tiers.
Yeah.
So, what I want to know from you is how do you come up with the tiers, number one? And number two, how do you rank the teams? Do you rank them in each portion of the tier, or do you rank them 1 through 32 and then place them in each tier?
Okay, yeah. So the tiers were kind of last year. What I did was I had two sides of the board. So it was so basically you got 16 on each side. So 16 is basically your playoff teams. I know they've added or whatever, but that was roughly like your playoff teams. So it was a big deal to like for a team to climb to the other side of the board. So this year I'm like, well, I'm going to divide it up even more because what I found out when I do this way. So to answer your question, they really are a 1 through 32 mostly. But what I will do is once I do the 1 through 32, then I look at them divided. And so then I look at 1 through 8, and then I kind of focus on 1 through 8 and like, does 8 need to jump up? And because I try not to bring 9 into it, like, okay, like that's a hard cutoff for me. And it's also fun for the fans too, because it's fun to argue the categories. I have a little fun with the team names. Like around Thanksgiving, I think a category was called the lima beans because that's just a horrible side dish for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But yeah, the rankings aren't like hard set, but it does divide it up for me like in my mind. And what's funny is it's always that my third quadrant now, 17 through 24 is wild because you'll have teams in there that were almost in, a wild card position last week. And then this week it looks like, they're going to drop completely out of it. I think going into last week, 24 teams were still eligible or within like a game of the playoffs. It's crazy this year what's happening. And so, it's something I have a lot of fun with. But in general, it's 1 through 32. And then, the quadrants are kind of a reward or a punishment. I guess you can look at it either way for their success or failures.
So, Jeff, I gotta ask you.
Yep.
I'm a big Green Bay Packer fan.
Okay.
Okay. And I look at your rankings. You got us number 3. Okay. Behind Arizona, Tampa Bay. I think that's kind of the cream of the crop in the NFC right now. How much of a gap do you think it is between those 3 teams? Or do you think all of them are just really bunched together?
It's very little. I can tell you like what I did this week. The Packers were on a bye, so I try not to move a team on a bye, and that's just how it goes all season, and it works itself out at the end of the year.
Right.
Green Bay, I believe. Yeah, no, they almost jumped to 1. I think it was last week, but I also figure in mine. It's not just like mine isn't really just who plays. Like if they played Saturday, who wins. Mine's not totally like that because I understand the NFL is about home field advantage. It's about remaining schedule. It's about so many other factors rather than just like head to head. So right now, the only reason the Packers are at 3 is because now they don't have home field advantage. If you tell me Green Bay is going to have home field advantage over, the Buccaneers, well, then I at Lambeau Field, then I'm going to move the Packers up because that's a huge advantage going into playoffs. So, and then the Packers have had it's just, I'm always ready to leap them up there, and then they'll have kind of a stinker, and I'm like, I'm going to bring them back a little. But do I think they can beat any team in the NFL? I absolutely do. I like the Green Bay Packers this year. I'd say the biggest division right now this week is I think there's a gap between the Packers and Patriots, who I have at 4. I have the Patriots at 4. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. They've got a really nice they got a nice schedule coming up, to really pad that. The AFC, the teams below them, I mean, they just beat the Bills. I mean, who else do they want to beat? The Titans are up and down. So, but I think the difference between, those top 3 teams in the NFC and then the Patriots, I think that's probably the biggest gap. Dallas, they kind of come back to the pack a little. They were number 1 a few weeks ago. I almost regret that. They're starting to show some of their typical flaws, but now they've lost that home field advantage. So now they're traveling in the playoffs, and I don't like them near as much, away from Jerry World, especially if they have to go to Lambeau Field. I don't think, I think that's a mismatch for anybody in that weather that they're going to have there in January. So, but to answer your question, the Packers are really good. I foresee them hitting that 1 spot before the end of the year, but Arizona just keeps winning.
Yeah.
It's just it's unbelievable what they've done this year. I knew they were going to be good, but they're really good.
Yeah, Mo Murphy's starting to get nervous, man. I think he's starting to definitely get a little
Hey,
nervous,
here's the
man.
good news for Dallas fans. You can't go 8-8 anymore. You either got to go 9-7, or I mean, you either got to go 9-8 or 8-9. You can't go 8-8 anymore. So you can't go
Right.
500 anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there's definitely some flaws there in the Cowboys. It's I don't know what it is. There's always just something about them. They just always look too comfortable to me. They just at this point in the season, I need to just see more grit and bite out of them. I can never put my finger on it, but they always just look too comfortable to me.
Yeah, and the another team you talked about, Jeff, number 4, the New England Patriots.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think about them this year? I think they're back. I mean, they look like a team that could win the AFC, but I have concerns. I don't think like for me, you only passed the ball 3 times and you beat Buffalo. That is absolutely insane to me. I watched that whole game from start to finish,
That was
and
something.
and I did like Jeff. They threw one pass, and I'm like, they might not even throw the ball the rest of the game. Like, literally, like, what do you make of New England this year, and especially the job that Belichick is doing right now with that team?
You just said it. What they've done so many things right, and it all comes from the top down. So when they draft Mac Jones, what I didn't realize is, the first comparison was like, oh, he's like another Brady, blah blah blah. Well, no, he's not another Tom Brady. But what I realized is, no, he does play the same style and fit the mold of Tom Brady. So then I didn't realize it. Well, of course, that's great. Your offensive line knows how to play with that. Your wide receivers know how to play with that. Everybody understands the offense when that guy is standing, 5 yards behind the center and throwing the ball. Everybody knows where to be, the spot to be. They know the timing. They know all these things. And then Mac Jones has done. Oh, I mean, I can't. A wonderful job, an absolutely awesome job at quarterback this year. I hear it all the time, like system quarterbacks, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what a quarterback is. He is a guy you bring in to run a system of football and make it work. And he's doing really well. If he's his stats are weird. His completion percentage is nice. I think he's at like 70% now. He's not making a ton of mistakes. He doesn't really push the ball down the field, but that offense you don't have to. Brady had years to where he didn't push the ball downfield. You know, it's just he knows his role and he's doing it perfectly. He gets a little better every game. I mean, you think back, they should have won that Miami game easily. I mean, you fumble on the half-yard line or whatever. Like, that should be another win. They could have beat Dallas, easily beat a good Dallas team. That they could be putting this, the AFC behind them. But what it is the defense. Got a lot of veterans that can still play really good football. They know that they all know what each other needs to do. Udon's great. Linebackers are good. JC is awesome out there. They're so well coached on defense that they just smother the other teams. Their point differential, I think they're first in the league, but it's getting way up there. To most teams, honestly, your point differential isn't that much in the NFL. The games, New England's blowing teams out like by average. That's been the biggest thing. The other night in Buffalo, they run a zone defense to perfection. When they switch to zone defense, they run it to perfection. Josh Allen, within those tight windows, when that wind's blowing 50-mile-an-hour, had no chance. He couldn't throw his way out of it. That is a huge downfall of Buffalo. When they always lean on that passing game, and that bad weather, they were really outnumbered. Still could have won the game at the end. Buffalo's had some of the worst losses, in the league this year, honestly. They've been one of the most disappointing teams. But yeah, that New England team, I grew up a Dolphins fan. I've never liked New England, but I respect the way they're playing football this year. And each week I'm like, how good can this team be? How much better can Mac Jones be? It's been impressive team effort, coaching effort from top to bottom.
Yeah, all I'll say, Jeff, on the Patriots is don't let Belichick get home field not bye.
Right?
You don't wanna go to Foxborough off a bye against Belichick. And, I mean, if you have to go to New England for a AFC championship game, it's gonna be like the
Yeah.
Dynasty 2.0 starting all over again.
And
Um,
And
it
something else that Belichick has an advantage of in the AFC, he's either going to face young quarterbacks or a couple old quarterbacks outside of Mahomes. Like there's not a lot of dynamic quarterbacks, so he's going to have the advantage
Yeah,
going into these games. So when they get to the Super, if they would get to the Super Bowl and face a Brady or a Rodgers, that's a different situation. But
right.
if they're facing Lamar Jackson or Roethlisberger, they can avoid Mahomes. I think Kansas City's playing better, but I also don't think that they're to the level to where they can't be beat. Belichick's going to have the edge.
Yeah, and, Jeff, there's been times in Mahomes' career even where Belichick has shut him down for
Oh, absolutely.
quarters.
Yeah.
So, I think that'll be really interesting, but Jeff, before I let you go here, I gotta ask you this, man, just to get some confidence back into me. Will Ohio State bounce back, man? Is this gonna be a team next year that's gonna be competing for the college football playoff, the Big Ten, win the Big Ten East, and obviously beat that team up north, which we really need to do?
Yes, I think Ohio State's a better team next year than they were this year. I know we're
Okay,
losing superstars, but
okay.
if you tell me here, let's put it this way. If our defense is a little better against Oregon, easily win that game. If we could get one more possession against, Michigan, that's going to help. I mean, we don't need to shut teams out. We just need to steal a couple more possessions, get a couple more turnovers. Then it's going to get real lopsided for this team. They're going to be very good. Now, the what I will say, if you look at the Wolverines' schedule going into next year, they do not have a loss on their schedule until they face Ohio State. Like they just have a really favorable schedule. They're out of conferences. There's not. I think they got UConn on their schedule. I think Colorado State, UConn. It's like the teams are spaced out. Of course, you still have your Penn States and Wisconsin's. Wisconsin's going to be a good team next year. They'll probably be the third best team in the Big Ten. But yes, I would say Ohio State's just fine, especially with the new D coordinator. They're going to get somebody in the transfer portal. I'm not worried about Ewers leaving. I expected that from day one. It's not even an issue for me. Every most teams don't have a great backup quarterback, so it's not like everybody in college football has their next quarterback, already. Stroud, the most impressive thing I saw was Stroud in that game against the Wolverines. I thought was one of his best games of the year. He had, I think it was the highest pressure rate of any team all year that he went through, but he still stayed there and he fought through it. He put up, over 300 yards and touchdowns. Had a running touchdown taken back. So that's what I needed to see from him. Like the mental toughness was there, the physical toughness appeared to be there, and he kept slinging the ball in terrible conditions. So yes, but now I do think that I see the game next year being just as important as it was this year. I don't see either one of these teams with a expected loss until next November in Ohio Stadium.
Yeah, it's gonna be back in that great stadium of
And how
the
about
shoe.
Marcus Freeman? His first game at Notre Dame comes back to Ohio State. This is just unreal story. I love the guy. I hope he takes the loss, but wow, I mean, that's going to be a big game. Notre Dame will be ready. They're a tough, strong team. But I believe at that point, Ohio State, they're going to come into the season ranked in the top four, and all will be right with the world.
I think that's potential to be maybe a top 5 matchup next year to start the year, right? I
It'll be
mean,
close. It'll be close.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
good point.
that will be some matchup to start the year, and it's gonna be interesting, Jeff, to see who gets that game. If it's ABC, the prime time, or if it's big noon kickoff and Fox.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's, there's gonna be a lot of money involved with that, man.
Yes, that's a big money game. That'll be one of the most watched games of all time. It really will, because Ohio State always leads in the numbers, and Notre Dame's up there. You put those two together on a field with
Yeah.
both of them having good teams, it's going to be all the excitement coming off of summer, all the hype. It's going to be something.
But, Jeff, appreciate you so much for your time, man, taking about 44 minutes with us.
Oh,
Uh
this was a blast, man.
if you guys haven't already, please subscribe, hit the bell notification, hit the like button, comment down below if you want to see Jeff on some more. Plan on definitely having Jeff as one of our regular guests now. Loved having him on. Love this interview. And again, make sure to check out Off the Ball Network. Make sure to check out Jeff Hunt on Twitter at jhunt006. Also, make sure to check out Jeff Needs Sports. We'll have that link down below for you guys. And as we mentioned, Jeff Hunt, Mr. Buckeye Nation himself. OHIO. Let's go. You boys have a great night. Jeff, stick around for a few. We'll talk after. But you boys have a great night. Appreciate y'all and keep making every moment matter.